The alien observation ship Eternal Watch drifted silently through space. Its sensors focused on the small blue planet orbiting a yellow star. Inside the ship, Veltar studied the data streaming across his screens. His tentacles moved quickly over the controls as he analyzed another warrior species. Same as always, he muttered to his assistant. The creatures on the third planet called Earth showed all the typical signs. They fought constantly, divided into tribes and nations. Their history was filled with wars, conquests, and battles for territory. Veltar had seen this pattern hundreds of times before. Every warrior species in the galaxy followed the same basic rules. The strong dominated the weak. Leaders fought for power and resources. Soldiers obeyed their commanders without question. These humans seemed no different from any other aggressive species the Coalition had discovered. Category 7 classification. His assistant asked. Yes, standard territorial mammals with combat hierarchies, Veltar replied, updating their records. They have warlords who seek control, warriors who fight for glory, and soldiers who follow orders. Nothing special here. But Veltar was wrong. 3 months later, the human ship New Horizon approached the massive Coalition space station called Harmony Prime. Captain Lee Hayan stood on his bridge, trying not to show how amazed he felt. The station was huge, built by dozens of different alien races working together. This was humanity's first chance to join the galactic community. Captain, said Communications Officer Park Mina, we're getting a distress call. A civilian transport is under attack by raiders. It's about 6 hours off our planned route. Lee Hayan looked at the main screen. A damaged alien ship was being attacked by sleek predator vessels. Through the transport's windows, he could see families pressed against the glass, their strange alien faces showing clear terror. Change course, he said quietly. Sir, our orders are to go straight to the station, Lieutenant Choi reminded him. The diplomatic mission is too important to delay. I heard the orders, Lee Hayan replied. Change course anyway. The human ship was built for exploration, not fighting. But Captain Lee Hyun and his crew fought with skill and determination. They drove off the raiders and captured several of their ships. The alien observers watching from nearby vessels expected the humans to follow standard warrior behavior next. They would either kill the captured raiders or take their ships as prizes. Instead, something completely unexpected happened. Captain Lee Hyun personally went to the medical bay to check on the wounded raiders. He made sure they received the same medical care as his own injured crew members. When his officers asked about claiming the raider ships as war prizes, he refused. Release them, he ordered. Give them enough fuel to reach the nearest port. But Captain, one officer protested, they're pirates. They were attacking innocent civilians. They're defeated and no longer a threat, Lee Hayan replied. We don't profit from others' suffering. The human captain then spent hours making sure the refugee transport reached safety. He used his own ship's supplies to repair their engines and provided food for the scared families aboard. When the grateful aliens offered him rewards, he politely refused everything. The Coalition observers were completely confused. They had never seen behavior like this from any warrior species. One alien commander transmitted a question to the human ship. Captain Lee Hayan, why did you risk your important diplomatic mission to save strangers? Why did you help your enemies? What do you gain from this? Lee Hayan's answer was simple. It was the right thing to do. The alien commanders looked at each other in bewilderment. The right thing to do. What did that even mean? In their experience, warriors did what benefited themselves, their tribe, or their leaders. They fought for territory, resources, or glory. But fighting for abstract concepts like right and wrong made no sense to them. Dr. Crickstall, the Coalition's expert on warrior psychology, watched the recordings of the human rescue operation over and over. He had studied every type of fighter in the galaxy. brutal warlords who conquered for power, savage warriors who fought for honor and glory, disciplined soldiers who followed orders without question. But these humans didn't fit any known pattern. They fought with the skill of experienced warriors, but they followed strange rules that seemed to work against their own interests. They risked their lives for complete strangers. They showed mercy to enemies who had tried to kill them. They refused rewards and profits from their victories. This makes no tactical sense, Dr. Crystal told his research team. Their behavior actually reduces their chances of survival and success. Yet they seem to consider it normal. When the New Horizon finally reached Harmony Prime, news of the rescue had already spread throughout the station. Alien diplomats and military officers crowded the docking bay to get their first look at these strange new warriors who fought according to incomprehensible rules. Ambassador Kim Tae, the head of the human diplomatic mission, stepped off the ship to meet the coalition representatives. Behind him came Captain Lee Hyun, still wearing his battle-damaged uniform. The alien officials stared at them with curiosity and confusion. "Welcome to the coalition," said Elder Zexmith, the ancient leader of the ethereal race. "We have many questions about your people. We're happy to answer them," Ambassador Kim Tae replied politely. But as the humans were escorted into the station, the alien observers knew that their questions wouldn't be easy to answer. How do you explain warriors who fight for ideals instead of profit? How do you classify fighters who value honor over victory? The galaxy was about to discover that humanity brought something completely new to the stars. Something that would change everything they thought they knew about war, strength, and what it truly meant to be a warrior. The first meeting between humans and the coalition had begun, and nothing would ever be the same. Dr. Crystal paced nervously in front of the coalition council. The meeting room was filled with representatives from dozens of alien species, all waiting to hear his report about the humans. For 6 months, he had been studying these strange new warriors, and what he found made no sense at all. "Honored council members," he began, "I have studied over 1,000 warrior species in my career, but humans are different. They do things that go against everything we know about how fighters behave." The large screen behind him lit up with video footage. It showed Lieutenant Colonel Han Sol defending a mining colony. The enemy had 10 times more soldiers and better weapons. Any normal warrior would either run away or sacrifice the civilians to save his own troops. "Watch what this human does instead," Dr. Crystal said. The council watched in amazement as Han Sol organized the evacuation of all civilians first. He put women, children, and elderly aliens on transport ships, while his soldiers held defensive positions. Even when 60% of his men were wounded or killed, he refused to retreat until every civilian was safe. "This behavior makes no tactical sense," Dr. Crystal explained. He deliberately weakened his military position to save people who had no fighting value. Counselor Vex, a large reptilian creature, raised his clawed hand. "Perhaps their species lacks proper military training." "That's what I thought too," Dr. Crystal replied. "But look at this next case." The screen showed Commander Yujin accepting the surrender of enemy forces. She had completely defeated them in battle, and could have done whatever she wanted with the prisoners. Standard warrior behavior would be to either kill them as examples or enslave them for labor. Instead, Commander Yujin did something incredible. She provided medical treatment for the wounded enemies. She gave them food and water. Then she let them go home safely, even providing fuel for their ships. When questioned about this decision, Dr. Crystal continued. Commander Yujin said that defeated enemies deserved mercy, not punishment. She called it the honorable thing to do. Murmurs of confusion spread through the council chamber. The word honor had different meanings for different species, but it usually meant reputation or glory gained through victory. Using it to describe kindness to enemies was completely foreign to them. "The most disturbing case is number 2, Dr. Crystal said, changing the screen again. This time they watched Captain Oh-sung finding a wounded enemy soldier on a battlefield. This particular alien had killed 3 of Oh-sung's close friends just hours earlier. The security camera showed the alien lying in pain, clearly dying from his injuries. Every warrior instinct should have told Oh-sung to leave his enemy to die, or even finish him off quickly. Instead, the human captain carefully bandaged the alien's wounds. He gave him water and pain medicine. He called for medical evacuation, using resources that his own wounded soldiers desperately needed. "Why?" asked Elder Zexmith, the ancient leader of the Warlords. "What possible benefit could this human gain from helping his enemy?" Dr. Crystal played the audio recording of Captain Oh-sung's explanation. "A true warrior protects those who cannot protect themselves, regardless of which side they fought on. When someone is wounded and helpless, they are no longer an enemy. They are just another living being who needs help." The council chamber fell completely silent. In 10,000 years of galactic civilization, they had never heard anything like this. Warriors were supposed to fight for their tribe, their territory, their resources, or their glory. But these humans seemed to fight for invisible ideas that didn't benefit them at all. "Dr. Crystal," said Counselor Vex, "have you discovered what motivates this behavior? Do they gain political advantage? Does it increase their social status? Do their leaders reward them for it?" "That's just it," Dr. Crystal replied, his voice showing frustration. "There are no rewards. In fact, many of these humans face criticism from their own people for taking unnecessary risks, but they keep doing it anyway." He pulled up more files, showing dozens of similar incidents. Human soldiers sharing their food with enemy prisoners. Human pilots risking their lives to rescue crashed enemy fighters. Human commanders refusing to attack civilian targets even when it would help them win battles. They speak constantly about something they call chivalry and honor codes, Dr. Crystal explained. These seem to be rules they follow voluntarily, even when following them makes victory harder or impossible. Dr. Yolandra, a coalition anthropologist, stood up from her seat. "Dr. Crystal, I've been studying human history and culture. I believe I may have found something important. May I present my findings?" "Please do," Dr. Crystal said gratefully. Dr. Yolandra activated her own display. "The key lies in something humans call knighthood. It's an ancient warrior tradition from their homeworld, but it's unlike anything we've seen before." The screen showed images from Earth's medieval period, knights in armor, but the focus wasn't on their weapons or victories. Instead, the images showed knights helping the poor, protecting the weak, and following complex moral codes. These knights were warriors who voluntarily accepted restrictions on their behavior, Dr. Yolandra explained. They promised to protect innocence, show mercy to enemies, and place moral duty above personal gain. Most remarkably, this tradition survived and evolved. Modern human military officers still swear similar oaths. Elder Zexmith leaned forward in his chair. "Dr. Yolandra, are you saying that an entire species has chosen to handicap themselves in warfare by following moral restrictions?" "Exactly, Elder. And somehow, it seems to make them more effective, not less." The implications were staggering. Every known species fought for survival, territory, or resources. But humans had created warriors who fought for principles that transcended their own interests. They had turned warfare into something that served higher ideals rather than basic instincts. As the council meeting ended, one question echoed in everyone's minds. If these human knights were so effective despite their moral restrictions, what did that say about the way the rest of the galaxy had been fighting wars for thousands of years? The answer to that question would soon change everything. Dr. Yolandra stood in the center of the Coalition's largest research facility, surrounded by floating holographic displays. For months, she had been digging deep into human history, trying to understand why these strange warriors behaved so differently from every other species in the galaxy. The answer, she announced to the gathering of alien scientists, is something humans call knighthood. But it's not what you think. The hologram changed to show ancient Earth during what humans called the medieval period. Armored warriors on horseback appeared, but these weren't like the brutal warlords the aliens expected to see. At first glance, these look like typical warrior kings, Dr. Yalandra explained. But watch closely. The display showed a knight helping an old woman carry water to her home. Another knight was sharing his food with hungry children. A third was tending to wounded enemies after a battle. These warriors followed something called a code of chivalry. Dr. Yalandra continued. It was a set of rules that told them how to behave, not just in battle, but in all aspects of life. Dr. Veltar, who had first classified humans as ordinary warriors, raised a tentacle in confusion. But surely this was just propaganda by their rulers, a way to control the warrior class. That's what I thought too, Dr. Yalandra replied. But then I discovered something amazing. The code survived even when the kingdoms that created it disappeared. The hologram fast-forwarded through human history. Medieval castles gave way to modern cities. Knights in armor became soldiers in uniforms, then spacemen in environmental suits. But throughout all these changes, the same basic principles remained. Modern human military academies still teach honor codes that come directly from medieval knighthood. Dr. Yalandra explained. New officers swear oaths to protect the innocent, show mercy to defeated enemies, and place duty above personal gain. The assembled scientists watched footage from a recent Human Fleet Academy graduation. Young officers from Earth stood at attention, their right hands raised as they recited their oath. We promise to defend those who cannot defend themselves, to show mercy to our enemies, and to choose what is right over what is easy. Most incredible of all, Dr. Yalandra continued, this isn't limited to their military. Ordinary humans, who have never been soldiers, follow these same principles. She showed them security footage of Lieutenant Baywan, who had been working as a civilian engineer when pirates attacked his transport ship. Instead of hiding, he had grabbed a weapon and joined the ship's defense. When asked why he risked his life, Dr. Yalandra said, Lieutenant Baywan replied, it was my duty as a human being, not as a soldier, not as a citizen, but simply as a human. Elder Zexsmith, the oldest and wisest member of the council, spoke. In his ancient, creaking voice, Dr. Yalandra, you're telling us that humans have voluntarily adopted behavioral restrictions that reduce their chances of survival. Yes, Elder, they call it civilization, but unlike other species, who see civilization as cooperation for mutual benefit, humans have extended it to include moral duties to complete strangers, even enemies. The room buzzed with confused conversation. Every known species fought for logical reasons, territory, resources, genetic survival, or social status. But humans seemed to fight for abstract ideas that provided no material benefit. Perhaps, suggested Dr. Crickstal, we should ask a human to explain this directly. Dr. Yalandra nodded. I've arranged for Captain Namsu of the human vessel Taras Pride to address us. The chamber doors opened, and Captain Namsu entered. She was a small woman compared to the massive aliens around her, but she walked with quiet confidence. Her uniform bore decorations that the aliens had learned were not for victories won, but for lives saved. Honored scientists, Captain Namsu began. I understand you're confused by our behavior. The confusion might come from how you define strength. She gestured to the holographic displays, still showing images of human knights throughout history. You measure warriors by what they can destroy or conquer. We measure knights by what they choose to protect and preserve. Dr. Veltar spoke up. But Captain Namsu, your methods seem inefficient. You could achieve victory faster by ignoring civilian casualties or executing prisoners. Captain Namsu smiled gently. Dr. Veltar, you're thinking like a warlord, not a knight. A warlord's goal is to win at any cost. A knight's goal is to win in a way that makes the universe better. She paused, looking around at the assembled aliens. Let me give you an example. Last month, my ship encountered pirates attacking a merchant vessel. We could have destroyed the pirate ship quickly, but that would have meant killing everyone aboard, including pirates who might have families waiting for them. Instead, we disabled their weapons and offered them a choice: surrender and receive fair treatment, or continue fighting and face destruction. Half of them chose to surrender. We provided medical care for their wounded, shared our food with them, and eventually released them at a neutral port. But why? Asked Dr. Crickstell. What did you gain? 3 weeks later, Captain Nemsu replied, those same pirates sent us a message. They had decided to give up piracy and become legitimate merchants. They thanked us for showing them that there was another way to live. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. You see, Captain Namsu continued, a true knight's greatest victory isn't defeating an enemy. It's turning that enemy into a friend, not through fear or force, but through example. She looked directly at Elder Zexmith. You have warriors who can conquer worlds. You have soldiers who can follow orders. But do you have anyone who can change hearts and minds simply by doing what's right? As Captain Namsu left the chamber, the alien scientists sat in stunned silence. They had spent thousands of years perfecting the art of war, but humans had discovered something far more powerful: the art of peace. Through strength guided by moral principles, the galaxy was about to learn that sometimes the most devastating weapon was not a sword or a gun, but a good example. The emergency alarms had been screaming for 6 hours when Fleet Admiral Vexfell received the message from the humans. The Devourer fleet had appeared without warning from the edge of the galaxy like a disease spreading across space. These biomechanical monsters consumed entire worlds, leaving nothing but empty rock behind them. 3 coalition worlds had already fallen. Billions of beings had simply vanished, eaten by the unstoppable enemy. Every available warship was racing to the battle zone, but most military experts believed it was already too late. The human message was brief and came from Admiral Li Wu of the Human Defense Fleet, requesting permission to engage enemy forces. Terms: full civilian evacuation protocols and medical treatment for all wounded according to human standards. Admiral Vexfell stared at the message in disbelief. Even now, he muttered to himself, the Devourers were killing entire civilizations, and the humans were still worried about following their strange honor codes. Admiral, his aide whispered nervously, maybe we should accept their conditions. We need every ship we can get. The human fleet that arrived was small by coalition standards. Only 50 ships against the Devourers' 1,000 massive vessels. But what happened next would change how the galaxy thought about warfare forever. While the main coalition forces engaged the Devourer battle fleet in space, human ground forces landed on the contested world of Kepler-4 for Tubi. Admiral Vexfell expected them to rush straight to military targets and try to destroy enemy weapons and bases. Instead, the humans did something that seemed completely insane. They began evacuating civilians first. Commander Park J. coordinated massive refugee operations while enemy biomechs attacked his positions. His soldiers took terrible casualties protecting alien families they had never met before. Transport. Ships loaded with frightened civilians lifted off under heavy fire, with human fighters dying to give them safe passage. This is tactically crazy, Admiral Vexfell's tactical officer observed. They're giving the Devourers time to build stronger defenses and bring in more troops. But something unexpected was happening on the planet's surface. The Devourers had evolved to fight enemies driven by fear and desperation. Their psychological warfare tactics were designed to make opposing forces panic and run away, leaving civilians defenseless. The human approach completely confused them. These strange warriors seemed more worried about protecting others than protecting themselves. When Devourer forces surrounded human positions, expecting the soldiers to flee. The humans instead formed defensive circles around civilian evacuation points. Even more surprising, the aliens being evacuated began to change their behavior. Instead of running away in terror, as the Devourers expected, many of them picked up weapons and stood alongside their human rescuers. Colonel Rube then held the northern evacuation route with a mixed force of humans and grateful coalition civilians. When massive Devourer biomechs broke through their defensive lines, he faced an impossible choice. Military doctrine said he should retreat to save his remaining forces. Instead, Colonel Rubin made a decision that shocked alien observers throughout the galaxy. "All human soldiers, hold your positions," he ordered calmly over the radio. "Civilian forces, fall back to the secondary evacuation point. We'll buy you the time you need." "Sir," one of his officers protested, "we'll be completely surrounded. We can't possibly survive." "The civilians will survive," Colonel Rubin replied. "That's what matters." His final transmission was heard across the entire battle zone. "For humanity. For all who cannot defend themselves." The Devourer biomech swarmed his position, expecting to crush the human resistance and then pursue the fleeing civilians. But something unprecedented happened instead. The alien civilians who had been evacuated didn't continue running. They stopped, turned around, and came back to fight. Not because anyone ordered them to, but because they had been inspired by the human sacrifice they had witnessed. Reptilian Christians fought alongside insect-like hive minds. Ancient ethereals coordinated attacks with young mammalian soldiers. 3 different species that had barely tolerated each other for centuries suddenly fought together like a single unified army. They weren't fighting for territory or resources or genetic survival. They were fighting for the same ideals that drove the human knights: protection of the innocent, mercy for the defeated, and sacrifice for the greater good. Admiral Vexball watched his tactical displays in amazement. The scattered, desperate defense was transforming into something the galaxy had never seen before. Coalition forces were fighting with human-style principles, putting civilian protection above tactical advantage, showing mercy to captured enemies, and somehow achieving victory, precisely because they fought for something bigger than themselves. The Devourer fleet had conquered hundreds of worlds. By exploiting the selfish survival instincts of their enemies, they expected opponents to abandon the weak to save themselves. They counted on fear, desperation, and every species for itself mentality. But they had never faced an enemy that had learned to fight like human knights. When Devourer commanders realized that their psychological warfare was not only failing but actually making their enemies stronger and more unified, they began to panic. For the first time in their expansion across the galaxy, they started to retreat. "Get me Admiral Li Wu immediately," Admiral Dexfell ordered. The human admiral appeared on the communication screen. His uniform was torn and bloody from the battle, but his eyes were calm and clear. "Admiral Vexfell," he said, "status report. All civilian populations have been safely evacuated. Enemy forces are in full retreat. Our casualties were significant, but acceptable." "Admiral Li Wu," Admiral Dexval said in confusion, "your forces suffered nearly 50% losses. How can that possibly be acceptable?" Li Wu looked genuinely puzzled by the question. "Admiral, we saved everyone we could save. We protected those who needed protection. We turned potential enemies into allies. How could any sacrifice be too great when measured against that?" As the transmission ended, Admiral Dexfell realized that humanity had done more than win a single battle. They had introduced an entirely new form of warfare to the galaxy, one that might just save them all from future threats. The age of conquest was ending. The age of protection had begun. 6 months after the Devourer War ended, something amazing was happening at Coalition Fleet Academy. For the first time in galactic history, they were teaching a course called Terran Combat Philosophy. The instructor was Colonel Kim Yu, a quiet, human woman who had volunteered to stay in Coalition space to teach other species about knighthood. The biggest mistake about being a knight, she told her classroom full of alien cadets, is thinking it makes you weak. Today's training exercise will prove that wrong. The simulation room contained representatives from 12 different species. There were scaled reptilians, floating ethereals, insect-like hive means, and many others. They had all grown up learning traditional warrior methods: attack fast, accept losses, complete the mission. Your assignment is simple, Colonel Kim Yu explained. Rescue the hostages from a superior enemy force, while keeping casualties to a minimum on all sides. Cadet Zixmara, a fierce reptilian warrior, raised his clawed hand. Colonel, that's impossible. The Knight protocols you taught us require us to offer surrender terms to enemies, provide medical aid to wounded opponents, and put hostage safety above tactical advantage. Following those rules will make us lose. Try it anyway, Cadet, Colonel, Kim Yu said with a small smile. The first simulation used traditional coalition methods. The mixed species team moved fast and hit hard. They rescued most of the hostages and completed their mission in 15 minutes. The results appeared on the main screen. 60% of hostages survived, 40% casualty rate among both attackers and defenders. Acceptable results by standard military doctrine, Colonel Kim Yu noted. Now attempt the same scenario using human Knight protocols. The cadets looked at each other doubtfully, but they followed their training. Instead of immediately attacking, they first broadcast a message to the enemy forces. We are here to rescue the hostages. Surrender now, and you will be treated with honor and mercy. Most of the simulated enemies ignored this offer, but a few seemed confused by it. No one in galactic history had ever offered mercy before a battle even began. The assault that followed was completely different from anything the cadets had practiced before. Instead of rushing toward their objective, they moved carefully to avoid civilian casualties. When they encountered wounded enemies, they stopped to provide medical aid even though it slowed their advance. Most surprisingly, when some enemy soldiers tried to surrender during the fighting, the cadets actually accepted their surrender and treated them as prisoners rather than continuing to fight them. This is taking too long, complained Cadet Vexara, a hive mind who was used to quick, efficient battles. We're going to fail the mission. But something unexpected started happening in the simulation. Enemy soldiers who had witnessed the cadets treating prisoners with kindness began laying down their weapons. Others who had been given medical aid started providing information about where the hostages were being held. By the end of the exercise, something incredible had occurred. Not only had the cadets rescued the hostages, but 70% of the original enemy forces had switched sides and were helping with the rescue operation. The final results appeared on screen: 95% hostage survival rate, and something that had never happened before in any military simulation. Most of the enemy had become allies during the fight itself. The classroom fell completely silent. Every cadet stared at the numbers in disbelief. The Knight's greatest weapon, Colonel Kim Yu explained quietly, isn't superior firepower or better tactics. It's the ability to turn enemies into friends through consistent moral behavior. Word of these remarkable results spread quickly throughout coalition space. Military commanders who had been skeptical of human methods began requesting human advisors for their own forces. The impact was immediate and dramatic. The Christian Empire and the Flesh Covenant had been at war for over 1,000 years. Their conflict had consumed entire star systems and killed billions on both sides. When human negotiator Captain Oh-hee was asked to mediate, most observers expected nothing but another failed peace conference. But Captain Oh-hee used human Knight principles. Instead of trying to get both sides to compromise, she convinced them that their true honor lay not in defeating each other, but in protecting their own civilians from further suffering. Look at your children, she told both delegations during the peace talks. Look at your elderly, you're sick, you're wounded. They have suffered enough. A true warrior's greatest victory is not conquest, but the protection of those who cannot protect themselves. For the first time in a millennium, both sides agreed to a permanent ceasefire. They had discovered that there was more honor in saving lives than in taking them. Meanwhile, deep in the archives of Coalition Command, Fleet Admiral Vexful was making an entry that would change military doctrine forever. He created a new classification in the Galactic database, Human Knight, a warrior type unique to the species Homo sapiens. These fighters voluntarily follow moral restrictions that actually increase their combat effectiveness. Their primary weapons are personal example, moral courage, and the ability to inspire similar behavior in other species. Warning: extremely dangerous to traditional warfare methods. Recommend immediate adoption of Knight principles throughout coalition forces. The galaxy was learning that the strongest warriors were not those who could destroy the most, but those who could save the most. Real strength came not from what a fighter could do, but from what a knight chose not to do. As the first class of non-human knights graduated from the academy, their graduation oath echoed through coalition space. We promise to protect those who cannot protect themselves, to show mercy to the defeated, and to choose honor over advantage. Not for glory, not for conquest, but because it is right. The age of warlords and brutal warriors was ending. The age of knights had begun, and the galaxy would never be the same.